Hey everybody, it's Anna. So today I'd like to share with you a response, a reflection I have had responding to my husband's sermon last Sunday, which was about the story of Mary and Martha. So in the Bible, there's a story of Jesus coming to the household of Mary and Martha. Martha is the head of the household, and he's coming. His disciples are coming. They're going to have probably lots of people visit. So Martha is busy getting the meal ready. She's getting the house ready. She's preparing the food. She's working really hard. And at one point, she looks into the sitting area, I suppose, where Jesus is, and Mary is seated at Jesus' feet. So she's not doing anything. She's just listening to Jesus talk. And Martha's pretty upset by this. She goes to Jesus and says, "Hey, I'm working really hard. Make her get up and help me." And Jesus says something like, I'm paraphrasing, like, "Martha, you are upset about many things. Mary has chosen the better part and will not be asked to give it up," right? So the idea is that Jesus is saying, no, Martha's chosen wisely, and Mary is chosen wisely, and Martha is distracted and upset. So Mary's chosen the right thing. So I've always, I feel like that I bristle a little at that, or at least when I was younger I did, because I feel like it's pretty unfair, which is I'm sure how Martha feels, because she's working really hard. Mary's not doing anything. It feels pretty unjust. But I think if you look at the kind of the underlying lesson, it's not just about domestic duties, right? There's something else happening here. There's also something interesting about Jesus specifically allowing Mary to sit at his feet when that is usually the role of a disciple or a scholar, and Mary is taking the role. So Jesus is extending the invitation of scholarly conversation or spiritual conversation beyond men into women, to women as well. So there's an interesting societal challenge here. But anyway, what I want to say is I was thinking about this story. I was thinking about the choices we make, right? What we choose. So Mary's choosing something, and Jesus says that's the right thing, right? I'm not going to take it away from her. Martha's choosing as well. So I was thinking about what it means to choose, and it occurred to me that this story connects really well to the Seven of Cups. So the number 7 is about discernment, or choosing, wisdom, and cups are about the heart. The heart is about your intuition, your genius, what makes you feel emotionally fulfilled. So the image shows a man looking at these 7 cups. They're floating in the air, and his job is to choose the one he wants. So when this comes up in a spread, I often say, look, there's choices available to you. You have to choose, but you're choosing not based on what makes sense, but on what feels emotionally fulfilling for you, what excites you, what makes you feel happy, right? So you're allowing your intuition to make a choice. Where we get to challenge with this card often, especially if it's reversed, I often say this, it's like you're not making a choice because maybe you're afraid you're going to make the wrong one, or you're conflicted about which one you want, right? So both of those are linear or mind problems, because basically the mind's saying, oh, we can make a mistake, which is a linear thing. You can't make a mistake in the spiritual walk, right? because the choice you make, the magic you're encountering in this world is not in the choices you make, it's within yourself. So when you make a choice, depending on where you're making it, right? If you're making it from a place of genius and intuition, you're always bringing the magic. If you're making a choice from a place of obligation or fear or pain, solving a pain point, then that's not coming from intuition. It's coming more from the mind's experience or the human experience. So what I will say is Martha's making a choice based on her expectation of what needs to happen, right? People are coming, and hospitality is a very strong teaching in the Jewish people's tradition, but also any nomad people's tradition. Hospitality is a big virtue. So she's thinking in terms of this is what hospitality looks like. Now, I would say that when we take action steps based on obligation or a sense of judgment, right? If you don't do it this way, something's wrong with you, right? We are not making a decision from a place of intuitive genius, but from a place of solving a pain point. So I can speak for myself. I have a 21-year-old, she's almost 21-year-old daughter, right? So that means I've been a mother for 2 decades. And one of my big challenges of being a mother, and probably other parents can agree to this, is that I had an idea of what things should look like. Probably based on partly my own upbringing, but also based on what the world projects to me, right? And I know that I've struggled for a long time with the fact that I do not do things do not look the way they should in my household, right? So especially keeping my house uncluttered and taken care of, right? That's a big deal for me. It has been a big deal, I'll say that. But I noticed throughout my time as a mother that, I would clean, I'd get things straightened, but I would feel angry about it, I'd feel frustrated about it. And I began picking up on this shift. So I might start off feeling like, oh, good, I'm going to clean this up. But at some point it would shift into something that felt bad. And so I began noticing this, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. I'm like, oh, there's a point at which I get very grumpy and very angry, kind of like Martha in the story, right? Maybe she started off the task of preparing a meal from a place of real hospitality. She was excited Jesus was coming. She was excited to have people in her home. She might have had a real heart for this, right? But at some point, there's a shift that happens where she's no longer acting out of a place of hospitality and love, but rather out of obligation. And now it starts feeling heavy and difficult. So about a decade ago, I made a decision that when I felt that shift, I had to stop what I was doing. Like, oh, you have got to stop. You can't, because I didn't want to be a grumpy mom. I just didn't want to be a grumpy mom. So it was wild because I'd be in the middle of doing something and I'm like, you have to leave it. You have to leave it. So half the dishes would be done, or half the laundry would be put away and I'd stop. Half the floor would be vacuumed and I would stop. And I thought, yeah, nothing ever gets completed because I have to stop when it starts feeling heavy. I have to stop. So there is something about watching the shift and knowing what it is. When I shifted from the joy of something into the obligation of something, something would shut down. It's almost like my intuition said, no, I'm done. And my mind had to learn, I sort of trained my mind to watch for that and to agree to it. So I would say there's this sort of navigation between the Martha and the Mary energy, right? I would also say that when you choose, so this is the Seven of Cups invites you to choose from a place of joy. When you're making choices from a pain point, there is some relief. Like if you're feeling icky and gross because your house is a mess, which is actually very likely connected to a judgment that you're not a very good person. Maybe you're not mentally well. Maybe you're not quite functional. There's lots of stories the mind creates from that, right? But that's a place of pain. And maybe cleaning the house relieves that pain. So it does feel better, right? But relieving pain feels differently than responding to discomfort that comes from wanting to create something. So let me explain that a little better. That the mind doesn't automatically know the difference between pain and discomfort. But over time, if you pay attention, you can tell the difference, right? So if cleaning your house makes you feel relieved, like, whew, I feel better. But you can tell, like, even when I felt that things were done, I would need verification or validation of it. Like something didn't quite resolve all the way because the fact that I was acting out of wound put me in a place of scarcity, because wound is about scarcity. Something is lacking, something's working against me, something's pulling me, and I'm trying to solve that in some way. So even if you successfully complete it, you haven't solved the actual problem. So you can still feel the wound. Maybe the wound's quieter now, but it didn't go away. So, I would feel like I'm not getting enough validation. I'm not getting enough affirmation. I would ask my husband to look at what I did. And he was like, yeah, that's great. It didn't matter. Right. So I could tell that it wasn't satisfying. Something about this wasn't satisfying. And I think that's because it's a purely human, wounds are purely human. Solving or soothing wounds is a human exercise. It's about coping, and that's good. We need to do it, but it doesn't quite go. It doesn't scratch the itch for the intuition, which is about creating and expanding, right? So when we want to create and expand, it doesn't feel the same as pain. It's not connected to wound. It's connected to discomfort. Like, ooh, something's inside me that wants to come out. It's like being pregnant and you're like, I want to get the baby out, right? It feels more like an expansion. And when you complete it, it feels like you go, yes. It feels like that's what I meant to do. That feels satisfying. So it's really good to feel the difference. And actually you can feel the shift internally between the Martha and the Mary, right? Like, I'm having a great time. I'm cleaning the house. I don't mind cleaning the house. I like it sometimes, right? But I like it when it's coming from a place of sort of, ooh, what can I make this look like? How can I fix this? And there's something like my intuition's engaged for some reason. Like, oh, I can make this beautiful, or the intuition's excited. Or the intuition doesn't care. The intuition is just engaged and the mind's doing something, right? But either way, it's not painful. It feels like it's just kind of an exploration of what's possible. But when it shifts into, oh my gosh, this house is a wreck and that means I'm a bad mom or a bad human, I'm dysfunctional. When it shifts into that, it becomes about scarcity. You can feel the heaviness setting in. And I feel like the story of Mary and Martha is, I think, Jesus showing Martha that she can stop too. Like, you come sit here, you have the conversation. This is where your heart wants to be. This is where the nurture is in our lives. We don't get nurtured by coping around wounds. We just get to stop pain for a while, or maybe we just get to mitigate it for a while, right? But that's not what feeds us. That's not what gives us excitement and purpose and meaning. So at some point, we want to get far enough in our healing process, and that's a whole conversation, where we want our minds to realize there's something else possible beyond just mitigating the pain of the wound. And I feel like every time I stopped myself when I was in the middle of cleaning or whatever I was doing, and I could feel I got angry, my mind wanted to keep going. Like, let's just keep going. And I really had to train the mind to not, if you will, if we're going to leave this alone, right? And discover over time that nothing bad actually happens. My husband doesn't leave me, my children don't get sick, nothing bad happens. No one's really judging me. Or even if people are judging me, who cares? It doesn't really harm me if people judge me. Whatever my mind's afraid of, it begins to go, oh, okay, even if we never wash these dishes or the laundry's never put away, things are okay. My kids are kind of happy and healthy and all is well, and my kids actually, I have a good relationship with my kids because I would stop myself before I would get resentful of them. If I kept going in that energy of cleaning when I didn't want to, I became like Martha, which is oh, Mary, I'm just going to smack you across the face. What's wrong with you, girl? I always could feel that was the natural next step. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So we're going to stop it before that. That doesn't mean I solved it. Doesn't mean I figured it out, but it did mean that my mind learned how to stop and live in that place of discomfort. And then something else happened, right? Something else was possible. So I talk a lot about the mind and intuition having a partnership in a relationship. This is really where the rubber hits the road in the relationship between the mind and the intuition, where the mind begins to learn our purpose on the planet is not just surviving or following expectations or coping around wounds. There is something else possible. And if we help the mind begin to agree with us to look for that something else that is possible, it makes more space and the relationship deepens and strengthens until new paths open up. And then you can pick whichever cup you want and discover that, there is some discomfort, there's a little bit of fear, but there's also, it's what you're here for. So it actually feels like you're doing what you're here for. So that's my thoughts for today. See you next time. Bye.